The Galactic Empire had ruled the stars for more than 10,000 years. Its banners stretched from the cold edge of the spiral arm to the rich heart of the galaxy. Countless species lived under its control. Some bowed willingly, some resisted and were crushed, and some simply vanished into silence. Among the endless data stored in the great imperial archives, there was one entry that most considered a joke. It described a species called humans. Long ago, the records claimed, they lived on a small blue planet called Earth. They were clever, but primitive. They fought wars against each other, built machines that polluted their world and never left their home system. The archives spoke of their sudden disappearance thousands of years ago. Scholars debated whether they destroyed themselves or simply faded away. To the Empire, humans were not worth remembering. They were dust, nothing more. But the galaxy was about to learn how dangerous forgotten dust could be. On the far edge of the Orion Arm, deep space listening stations caught something unusual. At first, the signals were faint, like whispers lost in static. The operators thought it was just noise, old transmissions bouncing off nebula clouds. But then the signals grew stronger, sharper, repeating patterns of mathematics, prime numbers, and coded structures no one had seen before. The transmissions all pointed to one. World Earth, the Empire sent a scout ship to investigate. The Vexorian Spear was a small vessel compared to the great dreadnoughts of the fleet, but it was armed and fast. Its captain, Lord Commander Sirith, was a proud officer of the Empire. When he received the order to inspect a dead world, he was insulted. His crew could feel it too. "Why send us to a graveyard?" one of his lieutenants asked as they approached the Sol system. "Because the Senate fears rumors," Sirith replied. His voice was sharp, cold, but inside he felt the same annoyance. "The common species are whispering about humans again. Our duty is to silence the whispers." The ship slipped past the orbit of Neptune, crossed the frozen paths of Uranus and Saturn, and then entered the inner system. The crew was silent as they gazed at Earth on the main view screen. It was beautiful. Blue oceans, white clouds, green continents. A jewel floating in darkness, but no cities glowed on its surface. No fleets orbited above it. It was quiet, too quiet. Sirith frowned. "Scan the planet." The sensors swept across Earth. The results came back strange. No life signs, no civilizations, no industry. Yet deep under the oceans and hidden in the crust, there were massive energy readings. "Captain," one officer whispered, "these are not natural." The ship descended closer, circling the planet. Then they saw it. At first, they thought it was a moon. A massive metallic structure orbited just above the atmosphere, silent and dark. Then another came into view and another. Soon they realized there were dozens of them, hidden in the shadows of Earth's orbit. Colossal machines, some the size of cities, some larger than any warship the Empire had ever built. They were old, scarred with age, yet still intact. "What are these?" a crew member whispered. Sirith stared in shock. His training told him these were weapons. But how could humans, a dead race, have built them? "Run full scans," he ordered. His voice shook despite his effort to remain calm. The ship's systems lit up as they probed the massive constructs. Strange symbols flashed across their displays, alien yet eerily familiar. Then, without warning, every console went black. The crew cried out in panic as the lights dimmed. The ship's engines went silent. They were adrift, powerless. On the view screen, the massive machines began to stir. One of the structures rotated slowly, as if waking from a long sleep. Red lights flickered across its surface. Another hummed with deep energy. A vibration felt even inside the scout ship. One by one, the ancient weapons came alive. The crew was frozen. None of them dared to breathe. Then, across every screen, every console and every communicator on the ship, words appeared in a language no one had spoken for thousands of years, but somehow, everyone understood. "Humanity remembers," the message repeated, steady and calm, yet carrying a weight that pressed into their souls. "Humanity remembers." The officers trembled. Sirith himself felt fear claw at his heart, a feeling he had not known since childhood. Suddenly, the power returned to their ship. Engines roared back to life, lights blazed, and the displays cleared. But the message still burned in their minds. "Retreat," Sirith ordered, his voice tight. "Now, get us out of this system." The Vexorian Spear turned and fled from Earth, its crew shaken to the core. None of them dared to look back. When the scout ship returned to Imperial space, its report caused laughter. The Senate chamber was filled with mocking voices. Machines orbiting a dead world? Old myths of humans? The senators chuckled. Fearful captains and their ghost stories. Even the Emperor smiled with disdain when he read the report, but others did not laugh. Whispers spread among the lower classes. The slaves and the rebels of the Empire. They spoke of the old stories, the legends told in secret. Legends of humans. Strange creatures who rose quickly, burned brightly, and vanished. Some said they had left on purpose. Some said they had hidden. And now, the whispers said, they had returned. Far away in the darkness of the Sol system, Earth continued to turn. The great machines above its skies shifted quietly, their surfaces glowing with ancient light. Deep underground, beneath mountains and oceans, more structures awakened. Vast chambers filled with silent armies. Fleets that had slept for thousands of years, waiting for a signal. The humans were not gone, they had only been waiting. The report of the scout ship spread through the capital like fire. Lord Commander Cirith and his surviving crew had spoken of giant machines orbiting Earth, of strange signals, of a message that had burned itself into their minds. Humanity remembers, they said. The senators of the Empire roared with laughter. Inside the grand hall, their voices echoed under golden ceilings. They mocked the terrified faces of the scout crew, replayed recordings of their trembling voices, and turned it all into entertainment. Machines older than our empire? One senator scoffed. What a fairy tale. Perhaps ghosts of humans built them to scare children. Another joked, earning more laughter. The emperor himself, seated on his throne of crystal and steel, watched in silence. His eyes were cold, his expression unreadable. When the laughter finally died down, he raised a hand. Whether myth or truth, the emperor said, his voice deep and commanding. Fear spreads faster than fire. These whispers must be silenced. He leaned forward. We will send a message to the galaxy. A message written in fire. If there are machines above Earth, we will burn them. If there are no machines, then the fear itself will be destroyed. The hall filled with cheers. The emperor raised his hand again. I command a fleet of 1,000 ships to go to Earth. Crush this legend. Bring back proof. Let every world know the fate of those who dare whisper the name of humans again. The fleet gathered in orbit above the capital world. A glittering storm of steel. Battleships, dreadnoughts, and cruisers, all bristling with weapons and shields, formed into tight formations. The fleet's admiral, Lord Careth, was a warrior of great pride, a man who had never lost a battle. He stood tall on the command deck of his flagship, the Imperial Wrath, and sneered at the reports of the scout crew. Humans? Extinct. Machines? Old junk drifting in orbit. This will be the easiest victory of my career. His officers laughed with him. Some even placed bets on how many hours it would take to glass the planet. When the order came from the Emperor, the fleet roared into hyperspace. Days later, the 1,000 ships burst into real space at the edge of the Sol system. Stars glittered against the black void. The fleet moved as one, cutting through the darkness with their engines burning bright. Course set for Earth, Admiral Careth ordered. The fleet swept past Neptune and Uranus, leaving trails of light behind them. Soon they crossed the orbit of Mars. Then, in the distance, Earth appeared, blue, green, and shining beneath white clouds. Careth stared at the view screen and smirked. So this is the mythical cradle of humans, pathetic, a ball of mud. But then his officers began to murmur. Admiral, there is movement, Careth frowned. Report, orbital structures detected, massive. Dozens of them. On the screen, shadows shifted above Earth. The great machines were still there, silent and dark, but now the fleet could see their true size. Some were larger than moons, shaped like rings, spires, and vast floating fortresses. The officers grew nervous, but Careth barked, Ancient ruins! Nothing more. Prepare for bombardment. I want the first strike to be remembered. The fleet armed its weapons. Thousands of missile bays opened, energy cannons charged, and dreadnoughts aligned their superweapons. Fire! Careth roared. The void lit up as a storm of firepower rushed toward Earth. Missiles streaked across the sky. Beams of plasma and radiation cut through the darkness. The heavens themselves seemed to burn. The fleet cheered. But when the light faded, Earth was still there, untouched. On the screen, one of the colossal human structures shifted. A ring-shaped fortress rotated slowly, its surface glowing with deep red light. Another awakened, then another, until the darkness above Earth was filled with giants opening their eyes. "Admiral," an officer whispered, his voice shaking. "They're active." Before Kareth could respond, one of the machines released a single pulse of light. It was not a beam, not a missile, just a ripple like a stone dropped into water. The pulse spread across space, silent and invisible at first. Then the fleet's ships began to shudder. Half the fleet vanished. One moment, 500 ships stood ready for battle. The next, they were gone, erased in a flash of nothingness. No fire, no wreckage, only empty space where they had been. The survivors screamed in panic. "Admiral, we've lost half the fleet." Kareth staggered, his pride shattering. "Impossible. Impossible." The machines moved again. The stars themselves seemed to bend around them. A second pulse spread outward, locking every surviving ship in place. Engines failed. Weapons froze. Even time felt slow, as though the very laws of physics bent under the weight of these constructs. The officers on every bridge turned pale. They were trapped. Then across every ship a figure appeared. It was not flesh and blood, but a projection. A human, tall and calm, eyes glowing with strange light. Their face was neither young nor old, neither male nor female. It carried the weight of ages. When they spoke, every living being understood. Their words bypassed translation, bypassed thought, and went straight into the heart. "You burn what you do not understand," the human said. Their voice was calm, almost gentle. "You rule by fear. You enslave. You destroy." The Admiral tried to shout back. "You are extinct. You are nothing." The human's eyes fixed on him. Kareth fell silent, unable to speak. "We left because the galaxy was not ready," the human continued. "We left because you were not ready. But you built an empire of chains. You built an empire of fire. And so we return." The fleet trembled. Every officer, every soldier, every mind felt the weight of those words. "Go," the human said. "Tell your emperor. Tell your senate." Humanity remembers. And humanity is awake. The invisible grip released. Engines roared back to life. Weapons powered on. The fleet was free to move again, but none dared to attack. "Retreat," Admiral Kareth whispered. His voice was broken. "Retreat now." The 1,000-ship fleet, now only 500 strong, turned and fled. They ran faster than they had ever run before. Back in the capital, the news spread like wildfire. At first, senators refused to believe it. But the surviving ships returned with recordings, sensor data, and terrified crews who all repeated the same words. Humanity remembers. The Senate fell into chaos. Some laughed nervously, saying it was all tricks. Others shouted in fear, calling for preparation of war. The Emperor listened in silence, his expression cold. But beyond the Senate, in the streets, in the factories, in the mines, the whispers grew louder. The slaves of the Empire, the broken worlds under its boot, the rebels hiding in the shadows, they all began to hope. The humans had returned. The galaxy was a place of whispers now. Every world, every system, every starbase spoke the same name in hushed tones. Humans. No one knew exactly what had returned. Stories spread of colossal machines, of fleets that appeared from nowhere, of voices that pierced the minds of the Empire's officers. Even the most loyal worlds under Imperial rule trembled at the thought. The Emperor, once confident, now paced in his throne room. His advisors gathered around, trying to soothe him, but the fear in his voice betrayed them. "They cannot be mere machines," he said. "They are too precise, too fast, too intelligent. Every strike, every pulse, they think. They anticipate. They are not just alive, they are something else." A council member dared to speak. "Your Majesty, perhaps this is a message. A warning. Surely they will not attack us directly. We are still the Empire. They cannot touch us here." The Emperor's eyes were like fire. "Do not underestimate them. They are humans. They do not fight like us. They do not think like us. And they are awake." Meanwhile, Earth itself stirred. Deep underground, ancient chambers filled with fleets of ships that had been buried for thousands of years. Each ship was larger than anything the Empire had ever built. Each carried weapons that could destroy planets, engines that could cross systems in moments, and defenses that seemed impossible. And above the planet, the orbital structures shifted, opening hidden hangars and docking bays. From these depths, humans emerged, not soldiers in armor, but figures of authority, of intelligence, of a calm that radiated power. They walked among controls, hovered over maps of the galaxy, and activated systems that had slept for millennia. No one knew how many humans remained. Some had left to explore distant galaxies, some had remained hidden, some had fused with their machines in ways that made them something beyond human. All of them were ready. On a distant system near the Empire's border, a patrol fleet of Imperial cruisers received a strange signal. At first it was dismissed as a glitch, but then the numbers began to make sense. Coordinates, star charts, system layouts, all from a language long thought extinct. Before the Imperial fleet could respond, the sky lit up. From hyperspace, a fleet appeared. Ships larger than cruisers, moving faster than light itself, spread across the void. Energy ripples distorted space around them. The Imperial commanders froze. They recognized the shapes immediately. Human designs, ships that had been lost in history, hidden deep within Earth and other forgotten systems, now fully operational. "This cannot be real," one officer whispered. "It is real," the other said, "and it is coming for us." The humans did not speak, did not issue demands, and did not negotiate. They simply moved with precision. One by one, Imperial ships began to disappear. Not destroyed, not exploding, but erased. Sensors recorded nothing, and no weapon could counter it. The Empire's strongest cruisers, their shields at maximum, were obliterated in seconds. Word of the attack spread faster than light. Systems on the edge of the galaxy saw strange pulses, flashes of energy, and then silence. Entire fleets vanished without a trace. The Emperor summoned a new council. Panic filled the room. Generals and admirals who had conquered thousands of worlds looked small and powerless before the evidence. "We cannot fight them," one general admitted, his voice shaking. "Our fleets, our weapons, nothing works. They are everywhere and nowhere." The Emperor's hand shook slightly as he slammed it onto the crystal table. "Then we must learn. We must study them, find their weakness. If we fail, the Empire will crumble." Meanwhile, humans did not attack indiscriminately. They moved with purpose. In some systems, they liberated worlds under Imperial control. Slaves were freed, prisoners released, and tyrants removed. But no human ever claimed a throne. No human ever demanded tribute. Yet everywhere they went, fear spread. The Empire had built its power on control and terror. Now the galaxy itself had learned what real power could be. Rebel groups, previously small and disorganized, suddenly found hope. They sent messages across star systems. Humans are here. They fight not for conquest, but for freedom, and the Empire could do nothing. The first true battle came near the Vexor Cluster, a strategic region of trade and defense. The Empire had assembled its strongest fleet, 500 ships, each bristling with weapons, each manned by veteran crews. The humans arrived without warning. One massive ship emerged from hyperspace, a black leviathan that dwarfed the largest Imperial dreadnought. Surrounding it were dozens of smaller, equally advanced vessels, moving in perfect formation. The Imperial admiral raised his hand to fire, but it was too late. A pulse of energy, silent yet visible, struck every ship. Engines failed. Weapons froze. Communications jammed. Panic erupted. One by one, the Imperial ships were lifted from space, held in place by forces they could not see, could not fight, and could not escape. From the flagship of the human fleet, a figure appeared, eyes glowing, calm, ancient, and terrifyingly intelligent. "You have ruled with fear for thousands of years," the human said. "Now you will feel fear as it was meant to be felt." Without firing a shot, the human fleet dismantled the Imperial armada. Ships were unmade, not exploded, but erased as if they had never existed. The surviving commanders screamed, powerless to stop it. By the time the news reached the Emperor, the Vexor Cluster had fallen completely. The message from the humans was clear. They were not just returning, they were claiming the galaxy for freedom. Across the galaxy, the pattern repeated. Wherever Imperial forces gathered, humans appeared. Hidden fleets, long buried in forgotten systems, activated and struck with precision. Stations that had been abandoned for centuries sprang to life, armed and defended by human constructs. The Empire tried to respond. They sent more fleets, larger fleets, fleets with experimental weapons. But it was always too late. The humans anticipated every move, countered every strategy, and dismantled every attack without mercy. And yet, they did not conquer. They did not enslave. They liberated, they protected, They reminded the galaxy what it had forgotten. Humans were not to be feared as tyrants. They were to be respected as gods of war, minds beyond comprehension, and hearts that fought for justice. In the Imperial Senate, chaos reigned. Senators blamed each other. Generals blamed the Emperor. The Emperor himself retreated into his private chambers, studying every report, every recording, every censor reading. He had faced enemies before. He had crushed rebellions, destroyed rival empires, and ruled through terror. But nothing had prepared him for this. Humans were not just a species. They were a force of nature. They could appear anywhere, strike without warning, and vanish without a trace. They were alive in ways no one could understand. The Emperor whispered to himself, "We have awakened a storm, and we cannot stop it." Meanwhile, on Earth, the humans gathered. Their leaders stood in orbit, watching the galaxy through sensors, listening to transmissions, reading every report of fear and wonder. A council spoke in unison, voices clear and calm. The Empire believes it is invincible. It will learn that it is not. They activated more fleets, sent more pulses into deep space, and prepared for the next stage. Not for war, but for justice. The galaxy would remember this day. The day humanity awoke. The day the first titans of human power struck terror into the heart of the Empire. The galaxy was no longer the same. Systems that had once bowed quietly to the Emperor now spoke openly of humans. Some worlds cheered their arrival. Others trembled in fear. Even those that remained loyal to the Empire whispered behind closed doors, questioning their leaders and fearing the unknown. Earth itself remained a silent command center. From its surface, orbital structures monitored the stars. Deep beneath the crust, vast fleets of ships, some larger than cities, prepared for action. Humans did not rush. They did not strike blindly. They moved with patience, with planning, and with a calm precision that unnerved all who witnessed them. The first major offensive beyond the Vexor cluster targeted the Lyran systems, a region heavily fortified by the Empire. Entire fleets had been stationed there to patrol trade routes, monitor rebellions, and maintain control. Yet within hours of the humans' approach, the Imperial forces were caught off guard. At the edge of the system, the Imperial commander, Admiral Theros, observed strange phenomena on his sensors. Massive shapes appeared in hyperspace before any fleet could detect them. Ships larger than planets' moons glided silently, flanked by hundreds of smaller, sleek vessels. Energy pulses rippled through space, bending light around the human ships in strange and unnatural ways. "Sir, they're everywhere," said one officer, trembling. "How is this possible?" "They are not bound by normal space," Theros said, his voice tight. "We are dealing with something beyond comprehension." The human fleet did not attack indiscriminately. They struck with precision, disabling key weapons platforms, cutting off communication nodes, and removing the most dangerous Imperial ships without firing conventional weapons. When the Imperial forces attempted to retaliate, they found themselves trapped. Ships were immobilized by invisible fields, weapons jammed, and shields overwhelmed by energy that defied all logic. On the bridges of the Imperial warships, projections of humans appeared. Eyes glowing, calm, and ancient, they spoke directly to the commanders. "You control through fear. You enslave through force. We will correct the balance." In a single moment, entire fleets ceased to function. Ships drifted silently in space, their crews frozen in terror. Not a single human weapon had fired, yet devastation was total. The Emperor was informed of the Lyran defeat almost immediately. He had expected resistance, but not annihilation. Not from a species he considered extinct. "Send reinforcements," he demanded, his voice shaking with anger. "Send everything. I want Earth destroyed. Every ship. Every station. Every structure." Generals scrambled to obey, but fear had begun to spread like wildfire. Fleets hesitated. Commanders argued. Some even refused orders outright, fearing the wrath of humans if they failed. Meanwhile, across multiple systems, the pattern repeated. Humans liberated planets, freed enslaved populations, and dismantled the Empire's military infrastructure. They did not occupy these worlds, nor did they demand tribute. They left clear instructions: "You are free. Govern yourselves. Learn what we once knew. Freedom is worth protecting." Everywhere they went, humans were seen as both saviors and terrifying gods. The first direct confrontation with an Imperial fortress occurred in the Halon Rift. a heavily fortified cluster of orbital platforms and defensive stations. Thousands of Imperial soldiers awaited the humans, confident in their numbers and technology. The human fleet approached silently. Without warning, they deployed massive drones and unmanned constructs. The drones moved with impossible coordination, dismantling weapons platforms and disabling power cores. Energy fields enveloped entire stations, preventing escape or communication. The Imperial commander, General Varan, attempted a counterattack. His superweapons fired in unison, blazing beams that could have destroyed moons. The human fleet merely watched. Then a pulse of energy spread across space. The beams fizzled mid-flight, veered off course, and exploded harmlessly into empty void. Voron's eyes widened in disbelief. Impossible. How can they? A projection appeared above the main command bridge. The human spoke, voice calm yet carrying the weight of eternity. You rely on force. We rely on understanding. Your weapons cannot harm us because you cannot see the truth of power. Within moments, the fortress was neutralized. Not a single human ship had been destroyed, and the Imperial forces were left humiliated, broken, and terrified. News of the Halon Rift defeat spread instantly. Planets once loyal to the Empire began to question their allegiance. The Emperor issued decrees, demanded loyalty, and promised rewards, but fear had taken root. Rumors spread faster than communication channels could manage. Humans were everywhere. Humans could appear from nowhere. Humans could undo any Empire weapon. In private, generals confessed their fear. We cannot fight them, one said. They are beyond battle, beyond death. We are lost. The Emperor, refusing to accept it, tried to coordinate a massive counterattack. He ordered fleets to converge on key human-held systems. But humans anticipated every move. Fleets arrived. Hyperspace corridors were blocked, and entire armadas were neutralized before reaching their targets. The galaxy watched in awe and fear. Not a single system had fallen under human attack, yet no Empire fleet survived intact. Humanity was a force without weakness. In some sectors, humans met resistance. Rebel leaders, sensing opportunity, tried to ally with humans, offering intelligence and resources. Humans accepted, but only as partners. They did not lead, they did not command. Instead, they guided, supported, and enabled liberation. The Empire responded with desperation. They unleashed experimental weapons. Weapons that could destroy entire planets, but even these were neutralized with ease. Human constructs absorbed, redirected, or dismantled the attacks. On Earth, the humans observed the galaxy's turmoil. Leaders gathered in the great command halls beneath the surface. Our purpose is clear, one said. The Empire will collapse, not through conquest, but through liberation. Fear will be replaced by freedom. Chains will be broken, systems will rise. We do not conquer. We remind others nodded silently. The weight of millennia of planning and hidden preparation had led to this moment. Meanwhile, the Empire's citizens watched the news with horror. Entire fleets vanished. Systems once under Imperial control joined the humans' liberation. Trade routes collapsed, supply lines vanished, and the Emperor's decrees fell on deaf ears. Fear became pervasive. Soldiers refused orders. Governors fled their posts. Entire planets mutinied. And in every report the same message echoed, humanity remembers. Humanity is awake. The Emperor could feel his empire slipping through his fingers. He had relied on fear, control, and power to maintain order. But now, fear itself had turned against him. Everywhere he looked, humans were not just fighting, they were teaching. Teaching the galaxy that power was not measured by fleets or weapons, but by knowledge, patience, and purpose. The first sign of the humans' final stage arrived when a new fleet appeared at the edge of Imperial space. Ships larger than the largest dreadnoughts, armed with weapons of impossible scale, emerged from hidden systems. They were not in orbit. They were in hyperspace, moving at speeds that seemed to defy logic. The Emperor watched through hollow screens, disbelief etched into his face. They are coming for the heart of the Empire, he whispered. And there is nothing we can do. For the first time in 10,000 years, the galaxy's greatest power, the Galactic Empire, was truly afraid. The Emperor's palace gleamed atop the central world of the Empire, a fortress of gold and crystal, a symbol of 10,000 years of unchallenged power. From here, he had controlled millions of worlds, countless species, and entire fleets of ships. His word had been law and fear had been his weapon. But now, as reports poured in, his confidence crumbled. Entire sectors had been liberated. Fleets larger than his own had been dismantled without effort. Planets once loyal now whispered of humans, beings more powerful than gods, yet fighting not for conquest but for justice. For the first time, the Emperor felt fear. The humans arrived at the edge of Imperial space without warning. Massive ships emerged from hyperspace, black and silver leviathans that dwarfed even the largest Imperial dreadnoughts. Thousands of smaller ships moved in perfect formation around them. Energy rippled in space as though the stars themselves bent to their presence. The Emperor summoned his generals, desperate for a plan. "Destroy them," he commanded. "All of them. Spare nothing." Generals shook their heads, fear evident in their eyes. "It is impossible, Your Majesty," one said. "Their weapons, their ships. Nothing we have can even touch them." Another spoke, trembling. "We can try, but we will fail." The Emperor slammed his fist on the table. "Then we will die trying. Strike now." The Imperial fleets moved into formation. Thousands of ships bristling with weapons, engines glowing with power, advanced toward the human armada. For a moment, it seemed the galaxy might witness the final battle, but the humans did not attack immediately. They waited, silent and calm, as if studying their prey. The commanders of the Empire's fleets felt a strange unease. Every instinct told them they were about to be destroyed, yet nothing had happened. Then the pulse came. A wave of energy spread across the battlefield, invisible at first. It froze weapons in mid-charge, halted engines, and locked entire fleets in place. Communications failed. Panic erupted. The Emperor watched through holoscreens as the fleets he had built with pride vanished, not with explosions, but as if reality itself had erased them. Ships blinked out of existence. Armadas that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries disappeared in seconds. A projection appeared above the Emperor's throne, stretching across the palace chamber. A human, calm and eternal, eyes glowing, spoke directly to him. "You have ruled through fear. You have enslaved countless lives. Your empire stands on chains. Today those chains are broken." The Emperor rose, furious. "You are nothing, extinct. You cannot destroy the empire." The human's voice carried across the chamber, reaching every corner. "You overestimate yourselves. You have forgotten the power of humanity. We return not to conquer, but to correct." Without another word, the human fleet advanced. Their ships moved faster than light, bypassing all defenses. Weapons that could obliterate planets were absorbed, redirected, or disassembled. Entire fleets melted under human power without a single human casualty. On the Emperor's capital world, orbital defenses were neutralized. Energy shields flickered, then died. The streets below shook as the orbital megastructures, the last line of defense, were dismantled with precision. The Emperor realized that his palace, his throne, and his armies were all vulnerable. Humans did not fire in anger. They acted with purpose, striking only where necessary. Yet the effect was devastating. The Emperor sent his final weapon, a massive planetary cannon capable of annihilating entire fleets. He aimed it at the largest human ship, hoping to turn the tide. The human simply extended a hand-like structure from the ship, and the cannon's energy was absorbed. It did not explode. It did not deflect. It vanished, dissolved into pure energy that flowed harmlessly around the humans. The Emperor staggered, unable to comprehend what he saw. "Impossible. How?" he whispered. The human spoke again. "You taught the galaxy fear. We teach the galaxy freedom." At that moment, human fleets struck simultaneously across multiple Imperial strongholds. Every sector, every system, every station felt the same unstoppable force. Command centers fell. Weapons were dismantled. Soldiers surrendered, not because they wished to, but because resistance was meaningless. The Emperor attempted to flee aboard his flagship. It leapt into hyperspace, engines blazing. But a human vessel larger than any dreadnought appeared before him, blocking the path. The Emperor could not escape. The human spoke, voice calm but carrying power that seemed to bend reality itself. "You cannot run from the consequences of fear. You cannot hide from the weight of justice." The Emperor's ship shuddered. Systems failed. The hull vibrated as if it were made of glass. And then in a moment of silence, the flagship was unmade, not exploded but carefully dismantled. Every component, every particle returned to the void. The Emperor's reign ended without fire, without violence, only by the undeniable power of humanity. Across the galaxy, the news spread instantly. The Emperor was gone. Imperial fleets were destroyed. Planets once under the yoke of oppression were free. Citizens and rebels alike celebrated. For the first time in millennia, the galaxy knew peace. Not enforced by fear, but born of liberation. Humans did not claim power. They did not establish governors. They did not demand allegiance. Instead, they issued a single message across all systems. Freedom is the right of every being. Chains will be broken. The galaxy will govern itself. Humanity has returned to remind you. Power belongs to those who protect, not to those who enslave. On Earth, the humans gathered once more. Leaders spoke quietly, observing the galaxy they had saved. The Empire is gone, one said. But our work is not finished. Systems will need guidance. Worlds will need protection. Knowledge must be shared, not hoarded. Another nodded. We will remain vigilant. Not as rulers, but as guardians. The galaxy will never forget the lesson. In orbit above Earth, the great human megastructures glowed softly, a sign to all who looked up. Humanity had returned not as conquerors, but as gods of freedom, a force beyond understanding, yet devoted to justice. The galaxy changed forever. Systems once loyal to the Empire joined together, trading openly, sharing knowledge, and building alliances. Fear of humans remained, but it was mixed with awe and respect. Stories of their power spread from star system to star system. Children grew up learning about the humans who had returned, not to dominate but to protect. Generals who had once ruled with cruelty whispered the names of humans in fear and admiration. And in the quiet places, on worlds far from battle, humans continued to watch. Not to rule, not to interfere, but to ensure the balance remained. Their presence was a reminder. The galaxy was free because humanity remembered. In time, the stars shone brighter. Trade resumed. Science flourished. Civilizations once oppressed now thrived. And everywhere, the echo of humanity's return remained. Fear is temporary. Freedom endures. Humanity watches. Humanity remembers the galaxy had learned its lesson.